So if I'm not mistaken, which I possibly am, we've looked at page 505. I think that is approximately where we had left off, talking about T4 and T3. You wouldn't have to know that, but I do want you to know what thyroxine is, okay? That's probably one of the, not that one hormone's more important than another, but just for the same reason, why is pepsin so important? That's an enzyme, not a hormone, but why would we consider pepsin being so important from prior knowledge? What might pepsin do? Has something to do with proteins. It was a mechanism you had to describe how that process works, so it has something to do with proteins. You know the answer, you just don't know you know it. Yes, it's probably the most important enzyme for breaking down dietary proteins. It's not the only one, but it's certainly one of the more important ones. So with that being said, if that's an important enzyme, why might thyroxine be such an important hormone then? Because what does thyroxine do? It helps break down many materials. Important ones maybe like what, and what. Oh my gosh, you're making us think. Well, don't do that. Too early in the day for that. Yes. Okay. So the pepsin breaks those down. Okay. But it's the thyroxine that deals with the metabolism, the rate at what that's going to happen. So if that's not happening correctly, it's not that a person's going to have problems. It's just an inconvenience that they're going to have to deal with. But regardless, we left off with talking about thyroid hormones, correct? Because I remember trying to read that T3 hormone, that triiodothyronine. We did talk about that. I believe, am I incorrect? Because I think we, okay. So what I want to do, okay, is look at the right column, I suppose you could say the first real paragraph, okay, when we're talking about the thyroid gland. Oddly enough, there's something that we dealt with, this negative feedback mechanism, okay? So you see that hormone, calcitonin. Without any other knowledge, can you tell me what that calcitonin does? And we put a box around this, and it's meant to help you remember that. Why do we put a box around in calcitonin? Yeah, so it's going to raise the levels or lower them. Yeah, exactly, it's going to lower them. Okay, so on page 505. The thyroid gland produces calcitonin, which is usually not referred to as a thyroid hormone because it is synthesized by the C cells. Okay, now what that really typically means, that I'm not totally aware of, distinct from the gland's follicles. Calcitonin plays a role in the control of blood, calcium, and phosphate ion concentration. It helps lower concentrations of calcium and phosphate ions by decreasing the rate at which which they leave the bones and enter extracellular fluids by inhibiting the bone-destroying activity of osteoclasts, okay? There's a lot more complex materials on how that happens. We just want to know, okay, it's lowering the calcium ion concentration. We don't really want to say it just slows it down. We just say it forces it back in. That's why we put a box around calcitonin. I think that's a better way of helping you remember that. So calcitonin forcing the calcium ions to stay in the bone cells. Okay? So if that is what lowers it, Well, what is going to raise that calcium ion concentration then? It's really teeny tiny structures on the thyroid gland. It's not the thyroid gland itself, it's something associated with the thyroid gland. They're little teeny tiny ones. There are about 4 of them. Yeah, the parathyroid gland, which is little teeny tiny structures on the thyroid gland itself. Okay, so now I want you to turn to page 506. Okay, so parathyroid glands. Okay, the parathyroid glands are on the posterior surface of the thyroid gland. This figure shows where they're located. Usually there are 4 of them, a superior and inferior gland associated with each of the thyroid's bilateral lobes. The parathyroid glands secrete a hormone that regulates the concentration of calcium and phosphate ions in the blood. So we're not concerned about the structure of the gland. So right now we know that it's associated with the calcium ions. The next column over, okay? So PTH. The parathyroid glands secrete protein, parathyroid hormone, or parath hormone. I was going to say that doesn't look okay. Yeah, parath hormone. Okay, this hormone increases blood calcium ion concentration and decreases blood phosphate ion concentration. Okay, but we're more concerned it will raise or increase the calcium ion concentration. Okay, so there again, hopefully we're putting some context to what it is that we've been talking about in class. And I think it's worth noting, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. Once we get into January, okay, and maybe the first parts of February, but mainly January, people don't just feel like they've got a lot of energy. And there's a reason for that. It's nothing that you've done or that you can really do differently, but there is a figure 13.26, okay? One of the things that happens for us to create a lot of vitamin D, you have to have sunlight for that. So in these winter months, what's the first thing that maybe pops out in your mind when you think of January besides possibly being cold? And we're experiencing it right now. For those of you who have to drive, sometimes you're driving to work in the dark, and I'm certain you're done with practice, and it's dark outside. And I'm not saying that it's frustrating, but it's kind of like, God dang, I don't have a whole lot of energy in here. But when we look at that figure, okay, on 507, we get vitamin D from our diet, okay? That's a good source for it. Looks like cheese and carrots on the top of that diagram. Okay, so with cholesterol, intestinal enzymes, provitamin D, and then it shows those purple squiggly lines, and it's showing that ultraviolet light in the skin. Okay, that is another way to jumpstart the production of that vitamin D, because what happens is another hormone from a reaction occurs in your skin, gets sent to the liver, okay, and it's going to help start to stimulate other hormones to give you more energy. But if you don't have that UV light, it's actually hard to keep that production going. And that's why sometimes we feel kind of, God, I just feel slow and sluggish all the time. There's a reason for that, and that's what this is trying to illustrate. Okay. Other things we want to look at. Okay. I think we want to turn ahead to page 509. And as you can see, there's just a lot of detail we can go into. We just want to give you the best information possible in a timely manner. Okay, 509, hormones of the adrenal medulla. This is where perhaps I've taught you wrong. We always associate adrenaline, okay, as a steroid hormone, but that's incorrect, okay? It's actually an amino acid-based hormone, okay? And here we're going to read on why that is. Okay? Hormones of the adrenal medulla on page 509. The chromaffin cells of the adrenal medulla produce, store, and secrete two closely related hormones, epinephrine, also called adrenaline, and norepinephrine, also called noradrenaline. Both of these substances are a type of amine called catecholamine. Okay, I think I'm pronouncing that right. And they have similar molecular structures and physiological functions. So if we were to look just above that in figure 13-10 on this page, why would we say, just by looking at what you see in figure 13.10, that adrenaline is not a steroid hormone? What sticks out in your mind? You'd have to think, first of all, what makes a steroid hormone? If you can give me a steroid hormone besides these, I think it's going to make more sense. Can you think of a steroid hormone besides, or one that we have talked about in class? It was on that table that we had wrote down yesterday. What are some examples of some steroid hormones? Estrogen's one. Cortisol is another. Okay, what is it that those have in common that adrenaline is not characterized, other than just us telling you that it's amino acid rather than this structure? All steroid hormones have this structure. Cholesterol. All steroid hormones are composed of cholesterol. Okay? Do those structures resemble cholesterol, epinephrine and norepinephrine? The answer would be no. Okay? So if we turn the page, however, what do you notice? Because you had mentioned, you said cortisol is a steroid hormone. It is. So when you look at page 511, what do you notice about cortisol and aldosterone? Those are all associated structures of what parent compound? That's what you had just said no more than a minute ago. Cholesterol. Those parent compounds are cholesterol. Cortisol, aldosterone, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, all of those hormones have a parent compound of cholesterol. Epinephrine and norepinephrine do not. So they are amino acid based, not steroid based. Okay. I just wanted to point that out. And we're just about done here with some in-class readings, and we'll be wrapping this up here fairly shortly. Okay. I just want to look at page 510 now, where it talks about aldosterone. Okay. And I just want to make sure I've got battery power, still do. Okay, so the right-hand column on page 510. Cells of the outer zona glomerulosa, of the adrenal cortex synthesize aldosterone. This hormone is called a mineralocorticoid, okay? So if it's called a mineralocorticoid, what mineral would we be referring to when it comes to that of aldosterone? We said water follows this ion. Anybody remember? It's not calcium. Close. Sodium. Water follows the sodium. Okay. Now, does it follow the potassium? I suppose it might, but it's more so associated with that of the sodium. Okay. Because it helps regulate the concentration of mineral electrolytes such as sodium and potassium. Oh, did you read that in the book? Okay. So, yeah, I'm sure potassium has something to do with it, but it's mainly associated with sodium. Okay. Specifically, aldosterone causes the kidney to conserve sodium ions and to excrete potassium ions. The cells that secrete aldosterone respond directly to changes in the composition of blood plasma. However, whereas an increase in plasma potassium strongly stimulates these cells. A decrease in plasma sodium only slightly stimulates them. Control of aldosterone secretion is directly linked to plasma sodium level by the renin and angiotensin system. That's something that we really don't need to know. This system is over on the next page on 511. In college, we had to describe this process, okay? And that was a long time ago too. When you see in the bloodstream where we see angiotensinogen 1 and angiotensinogen 2, that hormone has to go to the lungs to get oxidized, and it combines with renin, and then once that renin then gets down to your kidneys, it causes the secretion of aldosterone to conserve water then. Okay. And then finally, cortisol on page 511, okay. Cortisol, is that a mineral corticoid or a glucocorticoid, do you think? What did we say yesterday? And it's on your table. Yeah, because it affects what type of metabolism? Glucose. Okay, so cortisol, okay, is a glucocorticoid, which means it affects glucose metabolism. It is produced in the middle zone, which we don't need to know, of the adrenal cortex, and has a molecular structure similar to aldosterone. In addition to affecting glucose, cortisol influences protein and fat metabolism. Among the more important actions of cortisol are the following. Excuse me. Okay, I just want to... Okay, on the following page, we're talking about stress here, okay? 512. I wanted to see if I could point out, because we associate cortisol as a stress hormone, and maybe it's making reference to that here. Okay, about the third paragraph down, it says the set point. Okay, that's where we're at. The set point of the feedback loop controlling cortisol secretion changes. Adapting hormone output to changing conditions. For example, under stress, injury, disease, extreme temperature, or emotional upset, inflammation reaches the brain. Concerning the stimulation response, brain centers signal the hypothalamus to release more cortisol releasing hormone. That's why I'm guessing CRH is, leading to a higher concentration of cortisol until the stress subsides. So that's why we say sometimes more is not better. Okay, we're under a certain amount of stress, whether it's physiological, emotional, any one of those can cause more and more of this to get released. And again, more is not better, okay? So it's going to actually slow your glucose metabolism down. Okay. I think that does it for what we actually want to read. It's got that table of glucagon and insulin. We don't really need to go into that far in depth with that. The last thing I want to do, then we'll wrap things up for today, okay, is on that table, okay, did we get to a non-steroid hormone? It was a glucocorticoid. Okay, and peptide based. Okay, and did we get this on your paper? No. Okay. So the reason that we want to point this out is this is not the only glucocorticoid. There are two other ones that we have talked about. Well, one other one, and then we're going to talk about another one here shortly, okay? So when we're talking about glucocorticoids that are peptide-based, what does this insulin do? Has something to do with glucose levels because that's what it's telling you right here. Does it lower or raise the sugar levels in your blood? Are we sure? Let's see, 50-50 chance. Yeah, it lowers. Yeah, okay. So this lowers, lowered. We'll just say sugar levels. Because when we're talking about sugar levels, what type of sugar are we talking about? Glucose, probably. So we're just going to say sugar instead of glucose because we're on the same page with that. Okay? Then what is a corresponding hormone to insulin? Okay? That is glucagon. Okay? So what is that going to do in reference to sugar levels? That will actually raise it. Okay. Okay. And one of the things that we had talked about, we've got in the pancreas, there's alpha cells and there's beta cells. Which one of these two makes the insulin and the glucagon? And we talked about this yesterday. Why are you right? Well, yeah, maybe besides saying in your notes. We tried to give you a little bit of a clue yesterday. There's actually two of them. Yep. Either think of agriculture, maybe even silver if you wanted to. AG. Why would we say silver? What's the symbol for silver? AG. Yeah. Yeah. Its next door neighbor to the south or below it is gold, so it just says AU. Yeah. AU. Yeah. AU. Yeah. What a friendly element. Okay, so alpha cells, okay, there's an A here and there's an A there. Okay, so alpha cells produce the glucagon, the beta cells make the insulin. Okay. So how are the sugar levels going down when it comes to insulin? Okay, so to make sense of that, we can do something like this. There's no rhyme or reason on why some of these are larger than others. Okay, we'll start with this. What's significant about this chain? When you take a whole bunch of monomers or monosaccharides and hook them together, you make something totally different. Not a monosaccharide, but rather what? A polysaccharide. This polysaccharide is called what? Okay, this is glycogen. This glycogen, in reference to this, okay, look at what the glycogen does. It's raising the sugar levels. How does it do that? In reference to glycogen, what does it do to all of those ring structures? Okay, but say that a little louder. Yeah, so causes this to happen. Okay, so it starts to break all of these glucose monomers from this polymer into all of these individual monosaccharides. So therefore, that raises the blood sugar levels. Okay, So then just the opposite can happen. If your blood sugar level is too high, okay, the beta cells in the pancreas, okay, will start to secrete insulin, and it's going to change all of these monosaccharides into a larger polysaccharide, therefore lowering the blood sugar levels. Okay, makes sense? All right, so the last thing we need to talk about then, can I erase this? Okay, is another glucocorticoid, but it's not peptide based. If it's not cholesterol or steroid based, and it's not polypeptide based, there's only one other choice that you have. It's AA. It's amino acid based. Okay? So a type of glucocorticoid that deals with metabolism of sugars, you could say, would possibly be what type of hormone? It's what we said we're comparing your pepsin to this hormone. Say that again. Thyroxine, okay? Okay, so what does this thyroxine do? It affects glucose metabolism, okay? Now, you would be right to thinking in the back of your mind, well, how's that different than the polypeptide-based hormones like insulin and glucagon? Okay? This is causing your, and I think we said insulin causes, it will pull that out of the blood into the cells. That's not really breaking it down. It's just pulling it into the cell to be utilized. It's not actually doing the breaking down. This, however, does, okay? So this actually causes the metabolism to speed up. It gives you your energy. Insulin is either just going to cause you to create glycogen, which gives you no energy, or it's just going to pull it out of the bloodstream and put it into the cells, which isn't necessarily giving you energy. It's giving you more. It's giving you more gas in the tank, but it's not actually doing the burning. This is what's doing the burning of the fuel. This gives you the fuel. The thyroxine does. Okay? And then finally, we talked about this earlier. What's another name for epinephrine? Adrenaline. And we associate adrenaline with being a steroid, but it is not a steroid. How do we know that? Something we talked about even in your book. All steroids have to have this compound, cholesterol. This does not have cholesterol in it, okay? It's an amino acid-based hormone. Okay. It was driving here to school this morning, or for work, or for a staff meeting. It was where Mrs. Lee lives. And luckily, I want to say there's enough light. I'm driving north on Old 77. I thought, oh my God, that is a huge deer. Because I'm over half a mile away. I get closer and closer. And when we say limousine, for anyone who knows anything about cattle, what does a limousine look like? It's got the 3 doors on it, and something you take to prom and weddings, and hop on the back of the limousine, and the limo. Yeah. See, you're laughing because you want to take that limousine to prom now. But yeah, it's an actual breed of cattle known as limousine. What color are they? It's not black, that's Angus. It's not black white face, and it's not red white face, that's Hereford. The Angus and the Hereford gives you the black-white face. It's not Charolais, those are white. It's not Holsteins, those are black and white. But this is a mixture, you could almost say it's like a roan color. But like I said, I could see that is a huge deer. But of course it was this probably 1,100, 1,200 pound steer. That would be one pretty big deer if that's what it was. Heck, I could probably shoot and not miss that. But yeah, for those of you, I don't do deer hunting, but some of you might. But yeah, something that big, I don't think I could miss. Yeah. Anyway, so this epinephrine. It did kind of startle me a little bit, because what would happen if you got a little closer to that and you hit a 1,200 pound steer? That's going to absolutely demolish anything, unless you're in a semi truck, but it's probably going to demolish almost anything. So yeah, it was kind of scary. So what's a person's heart rate going to do? Yeah, it's certainly going to go up, and that's what this is doing. Okay. So with that, so this will increase energy from glucose metabolism. Okay? So as again, this helps regulate it, and then this really increases. This is happening all the time. This, however, is this happening all the time? No, you're not just walking down the hallway unless someone's jumping around the corner or in front of you and going, ah! Or I could say, do you know about that chemistry exam today? Oh, geez! Oh, that's really being circulated to the body now. Oh, maybe not. Okay. But that's the difference between these two. This, okay, that's always going on. Well, unless you're sleeping, okay. This is always taking place. This is certainly one that is released when it's needed. Okay? I can't stress enough. This table, okay, just like we want to know the name, kind of gives it away. When I say the breakdown name, we know that this has something to do with glucose. Okay? If we're talking about a mineral corticoid, that is not glucose. It's probably going to be what type of substance, what type of minerals. Either what or what have we talked about in class? Calcium, that's a mineral. And sodium is a mineral too. Now, which one of those two that have minerals in it is a steroid hormone, and which one is not? Which ones are not steroid hormones? See, it's like that. That's on this table that is meant to help you break down what these hormones are actually doing. Okay? And just what's a steroid hormone that is also a glucocorticoid? We said more is not better. Cortisol. That's certainly a mineral corticoid. I said glucocorticoid, sorry. Okay, so then what are your mineral corticoids? Okay, which one of those is a steroid hormone that's also a mineral corticoid? It's not parathyroid stimulating hormone. It's not thyroxine. We know that because this is amino acid. Okay, this is also amino acid. Okay, how do we conserve water? What type of hormone does that? Aldosterone, and that's composed of cholesterol. Okay, I think that's enough for today. We will get things wrapped up starting tomorrow. That gives us Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to get those papers done, and some of you perhaps have them wrapped up already. Okay, again, knowing this is really, really, really going to help you a lot. Okay.
On our test, will we have to fill out
they're just based off of this. Yes. I don't really think filling this out is good. And some of you might do that anyway, and that will help place this information into your long-term memory. Probably the best way to approach this. One, is it a steroid hormone or a non-steroid hormone? Then once you get that figured out in your memory, then start looking at the names, and that's going to try to point you in the right direction on what the function of that hormone is. Okay, and then, and I don't know what's the best way to associate these with amino acids rather than polypeptide. Just maybe think of something that you ate. I don't know. Why would we say that? A, T, and then E. I don't know if that helps or not. Or what's closely related to thyroxine, that iodine or something like that. Okay? Or else you could think TATA, I don't know. TA, whatever it is, they can help you associate with that. Okay, we'll catch up to you next time.